Madam President, Monday, the 4th of July, was the 240th anniversary of the creation of the United States of America. It was a day we celebrated this great nation. We celebrated our great leaders. But in Illinois, we lost one of our best in the passing of Abner Mikva on the 4th of July. Abner Mikva was a friend, and in addition to that, was an extraordinary individual. His record of public service is unmatched. I can't think of anyone off the top of my head who did so many distinguished things in both the legislative branch of our federal government, in the House of Representatives, serving on the U.S. Circuit Court for the District of Columbia in the judicial branch, and as general counsel to President William Clinton in the White House in the executive branch. You see, Abner Mikva combined them all. And the highlights of his life are an amazing story of a young man going through law school who decided in 1948 that he wanted to get involved in politics. Judge Mikva got his start when he walked into a 8th Ward headquarters in the city of Chicago in 1948, back in the day when the organization, the Democratic Organization of Chicago, was a powerful operation. Here he was, a young man, young law student, who was inspired by the candidacies of Adlai Stevenson for governor of Illinois and Paul Douglas for the United States Senate, and wanted to do his part. What transpired when he made that effort has become legend in Chicago. Abner Mikva showed up, an award committeeman, saw him at the door and said, "What can I do for you?" And he said, "Well, I'm looking to volunteer." The ward committeeman said to Ab Mikva, "Who sent you?" Ab Mikva said, "Nobody sent me." The ward committeeman said, "We don't want nobody sent." He then said to him, "Are you looking for a job?" And he said, "No, I'm not really looking for a job." And the ward committeeman said, "We don't want nobody who ain't looking for a job." And then the ward committeeman said, "Where are you from, kid?" And he said, "I go to the University of Chicago." And the ward committeeman made it clear, "We don't want nobody from the University of Chicago." That was Abner Mikva's introduction into politics. You would think he would have been discouraged by that, but he was not. He went on to graduate from the University of Chicago Law School, to clerk for a U.S. Supreme Court justice, and then to practice law in the city. In the 1950s, he decided to run for the Illinois House of Representatives. He ran against that same political organization that had turned away his efforts to be a volunteer, and he won. He came to Springfield, Illinois, my hometown and the capital of our state, in the Illinois House, and found some kindred spirits. One of them, Paul Simon, who eventually served here in the United States Senate, was Abner Mikva's closest friend in the Illinois House of Representatives. Another one, State Representative Tony Scariano, was another independent who'd come to the Illinois House to try to make a difference. The three of them roomed together. Mikva, Jewish religion; Paul Simon, Lutheran; Tony Scariano, Catholic. They called their gang the Kosher Nostra, and they set out to try to change the government of Illinois, and in many ways they did. But even more than their contributions legislatively, politically they created a force in Illinois, both downstate and in Chicago, which made a big difference in the history of our state. He was my friend. I was introduced to him by Paul Simon, my predecessor here in the United States Senate. I think of the two of them as my North Star when it comes to issues of integrity, independence, and progressive values. I was lucky to know Ab Mikva throughout my congressional career in the House and in the Senate, and to have Loretta join me as we had dinner with Ab and his wife Zoe in Chicago several times over the last several years after his retirement. Ab Mikva received the Presidential Medal of Freedom from President Barack Obama. And one of the reasons was they were close personal friends. It was Ab Mikva that Barack Obama went to when he was interested in a career in politics. And Mikva counseled him in terms of what he needed to do suggesting to him that perhaps he ought to listen more carefully to African-American ministers so he could put a little life and emotion into his speaking style. Obviously, President Obama took that lesson to heart. It was Abner Mikva who stood by Obama in his early days, running for the United States Senate and then running for the presidency. He was always his right-hand man, willing to offer advice and to connect him with the right people on the political scene. Their friendship endured until Ab's passing just a couple days ago. I know the president feels as I do that we've lost a great friend and a great supporter in what he was able to achieve. He also had a friendly way about him, a happy way about him. He enjoyed life. He used to engage in poker games that included Supreme Court justices and federal judges. Some of them, you'd be surprised to hear, included William Rehnquist, who would play poker with Ab Mikva, two men from opposite ends of the political spectrum who had their chance to get together and get to know one another. He left an enduring mark on America's legal system. There were so many young people who started off as clerks for Abner Mikva and turned out to be amazing contributors to the American political scene. One of those persons sits on the U.S. Supreme Court. Elena Kagan was a clerk to Judge Mikva and went on to the highest court in the land, an indication of the quality of people who worked with and for him. His law clerks went on to serve Justices William Brennan, Thurgood Marshall, Harry Blackmun, and Lewis Powell. The New York Times once branded Abner Mikva as, quote, the Zelig of the American legal scene. One brilliant young lawyer actually turned down a Mikva clerkship, and that was Barack Obama, who did find another way to contribute to this nation. In 1997, Judge Mikva and his wife Zoe founded the Mikva Challenge, a program that I've become acquainted with and worked with over the years. What Abner Mikva and Zoe tried to do was to engage young people in politics. And they do it on a bipartisan basis. If a young person wants to volunteer for the Republican Party, they find ways that they can be part of a campaign and part of working in an office so they can see firsthand what politics and government are all about. And of course, they provide similar volunteers for the Democratic candidates. These young people see their lives transformed and changed by this Mikva Challenge. I've met them and many times wonder what their future may hold, but knowing full well some of them will be in public service, much as Abner Mikva was during his life. Just a couple months ago, there was a special luncheon to celebrate Abner's contributions to public service and also the Mikva Challenge. And the decision was being made at the time, and I hope they carried it through, to make this a permanently funded, foundation-supported effort, which will survive, of course, Abner and Zoe and live on for many decades to come. Some years ago, Judge Mikva told a reporter that it's important for society to have heroes. He said, you have to have live heroes. It's not enough to be exposed to George Washington in grade school or Abraham Lincoln in high school. You have to have somebody who you can identify with in the here and now, who makes the institutions we're trying to preserve worthwhile. Well, I'm very proud to join the Alliance for Justice and many other groups who have stood up and acknowledged the amazing contributions that have been made by Abner Mikva and Zoe during the course of Abner's life. I'm particularly honored to have counted him as a friend. So many times he would give me a call of encouragement when we were going through some tough decision-making. I can't tell you how much it meant to hear from him personally and to know that he approved of what I was doing. He was always, as I said, my North Star and my hero in political life, and with his old buddy Paul Simon, his roommate in the Illinois House, they probably inspired this senator as much as any two people that have been living during my tenure in public service. I stand today in tribute to a great man and a great American and a person who made this a better country and Illinois a better state, Abner Mikva of Illinois. Madam President, I yield the floor.